Have you ever been told you're too young, too inexperienced, or just not ready to make a real difference? Today, I want to share a story that will change how you see your own potential. It's the story of Sophie Martin, and it begins in a small, struggling town in Ohio. When Sophie was just 22, she had an idea that scared everyone around her. Her hometown was in decline. Businesses were closing their doors. Young people were leaving for bigger cities, and a sense of hopelessness was settling in. While others saw a reason to leave, Sophie saw a reason to stay. She wanted to revive her town, one small step at a time. Imagine this: a 22-year-old walks into the mayor's office with a heart full of hope and a mind full of ideas. But the mayor just laughed. "You're too young," he said, shaking his head. "You don't have the experience." Most people would have walked away defeated, but Sophie wasn't most people. She stayed. Instead of getting discouraged, Sophie got to work. She spent months walking the streets, not just looking, but listening. She talked to her neighbors. She sat with struggling business owners, and she listened to the quiet frustrations of the community. The owner of the local diner complained about dwindling customers. The old library was falling apart, its shelves filled with outdated books. And the town's young people, they felt completely invisible. It would have been easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the problems, but Sophie saw something different. She didn't see problems, she saw opportunities. She pulled out a notebook and started writing down every single solution she could implement herself, no matter how tiny it seemed. She decided she wouldn't wait for permission to fix what was broken. Her very first project was the library. It was a dusty, forgotten space with broken computers and books no one wanted to read. Sophie didn't have a budget or a formal title. What she had was determination. She rallied volunteers online, started a small fundraiser, and even picked up a paintbrush and painted the walls herself. As she worked, neighbors watched with skepticism. You could hear the whispers. Why is she even bothering? It's just a library. They saw a lost cause. Sophie saw a community hub waiting to be reborn. 6 months later, the transformation was undeniable. The library was vibrant and full of life. Children, who had never set foot inside, were now spending their afternoons lost in stories. Adults were using the new computers and free Wi-Fi to apply for jobs. That quiet, dusty library had become a spark of energy, a visible sign that change was possible. And right there, Sophie learned a powerful lesson: small wins build unstoppable momentum. Of course, not everyone was cheering her on. As her influence grew, so did the resistance. Local politicians called her naive, dismissing her efforts as a youthful fantasy. Some of the older residents told her to stop dreaming and focus on something realistic. Even some of her own friends started to question her. "Why are you risking so much, so early in your life?" they'd ask. The pressure was immense. It's one thing to have strangers doubt you, but it's another when your own friends and community do. But Sophie had a unique way of looking at it. She told herself, if everyone agrees with you from the very beginning, you're probably not dreaming big enough. She saw resistance not as a stop sign, but as a confirmation that her work truly mattered. With the library's success under her belt, Sophie's vision grew. She went back to the mayor's office. But this time, she wasn't asking for permission. She came with a fully formed plan. She presented a proposal for a series of youth entrepreneurship workshops designed to teach teenagers practical business and marketing skills. The mayor hesitated, but this time was different. He couldn't dismiss her. He had seen what she did with the library. He saw the community's response. Sophie's passion was infectious. He finally agreed. The workshops were a massive hit. Suddenly, the town's teenagers weren't just hanging out, they were creating. They launched small businesses, everything from a local coffee cart that became the new morning hotspot to handmade crafts they sold online to customers around the world. The town, which had felt so quiet and empty, started buzzing with a new kind of energy. It was the sound of a generation finding its voice. Sophie never waited for a title or official recognition to lead. she led through action. When she saw trash on the streets, she organized a cleanup crew and was the first one there with a trash bag. When she heard families were struggling, she coordinated food drives. She spent her afternoons mentoring students, helping them with homework and encouraging their dreams. Her actions spoke far louder than her age ever could. People started to notice. The local newspaper, which used to report on business closings, was now writing stories about Sophie and her army of young volunteers. Teenagers, inspired by her relentless energy, started joining her causes. Even the mayor, the one who had laughed her out of his office, began to publicly praise her efforts at town meetings. Sophie was learning one of life's most important lessons. True leadership isn't about having a title. It's about serving your community and earning trust by doing the work. But the journey wasn't a straight line to success. About a year into her mission, Sophie faced her biggest test yet. A major factory, the largest employer in the area, announced it was shutting down. Hundreds of jobs were lost overnight. The wave of hope that had been building in the town crashed hard. Despair set in, and some people started to blame Sophie. They said her small projects were a distraction, that she was bringing attention to the wrong things while the town's economic heart was failing. The pressure to quit was enormous. Many people, even her supporters, suggested she move on and focus her energy elsewhere. This was a problem too big for bake sales and library renovations. But Sophie refused to give up. Instead of retreating, she doubled down. She launched an ambitious campaign to support the town's existing small businesses and attract new investment. She worked tirelessly, organizing town hall meetings to make sure every single voice was heard, from the newly unemployed factory worker to the anxious shop owner. She was determined to turn this devastating setback into a new beginning. 2 years later, if you were to visit Sophie's town, you wouldn't recognize it. The empty storefronts were now filled with new small businesses. The teenagers she had mentored were now running their own programs to support senior citizens. The park, once empty, was now home to community events that brought families together every weekend. And Sophie, the young woman who was once dismissed as too young and too inexperienced, had become a living symbol of hope and action. Through it all, she discovered a simple, profound truth. Your age is completely irrelevant when your purpose is what drives you. Sophie's story holds a powerful message for every single one of us. It teaches us that you don't need anyone's permission to start making a difference. It shows us how small, consistent actions can compound over time to create massive, transformative change. It reminds us that when you face resistance, it's often a signal that your work is important and necessary. And most of all, it proves that leadership is about service, not status. So, to anyone out there who feels too young, too inexperienced, or too small to matter, I want you to think of Sophie. Her story is clear proof that your time isn't in some distant future. Your time is now. Start where you are, with what you have. Make a move. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. See you next time.